Imagine the sound of axes hacking into centuries-old carved wood, not for construction, but for destruction. There's smoke choking the air, and the absolute terrifying realization that the symbols of stability, the government, the temple, the walls, are collapsing.
That is a visceral way to start. It sounds like a scene from a disaster movie, but you're describing the historical reality of the fall of Jerusalem, aren't you?
Exactly. We are looking at a massive turning point today. We have political intrigue, a prophet stuck in a literal mud pit, a king paralyzed by fear, and some of the most heartbreaking poetry ever written about national collapse.
It really is a study in leadership failure versus moral courage. The narrative centers on Jeremiah, who is essentially public enemy number one at this point. The city is under siege by Babylon, and Jeremiah's message is incredibly unpopular: surrender and live.
Right, which sounds like treason to the generals.
Precisely. They go to King Zedekiah and basically say, this man is ruining morale, he needs to die. And this is where we see the first crack in the king's character. Zedekiah is the monarch, the ultimate authority, yet he tells them, he is in your hands, I can't stop you.
That's shocking weakness. He just folds.
He folds completely. So they take Jeremiah and lower him into a cistern. The text specifies there was no water, only mire, deep mud. He sinks into it. It's a slow, suffocating death sentence.
It's a horrific image. The prophet of truth sinking into the filth of the city. But then, help comes from the most unlikely place, right?
This is the irony. The king washes his hands of it, but a foreigner, an Ethiopian official named Ebed-Melech, steps up. He goes straight to the king and says, what these men are doing is evil. He risks his own neck to save Jeremiah.
I love the detail about the rescue. They don't just throw a rope. They use rags and worn-out clothes to pad the ropes under Jeremiah's armpits so he doesn't get hurt. It's such a gentle act in a violent time.
It is. It shows a humanity that the rest of the leadership had lost. Jeremiah is pulled out, but he stays in the court of the guard, and then we get this secret meeting. Zedekiah pulls Jeremiah aside for one last consultation. He wants the truth, but he's terrified of the optics.
He's afraid of being mocked, isn't he?
Paralyzed by it, Jeremiah tells him, surrender and the city stands. Refuse and it burns. Zedekiah admits he is afraid of the Jewish defectors, afraid they'll make fun of him. He chooses his pride and his fear over the survival of his capital.
And that choice leads to the catastrophe.
The total collapse. The Babylonians breach the walls. Zedekiah tries to run. He flees at night through the king's garden, but they catch him near Jericho. The punishment is brutal. He watches his sons die, and then they put out his eyes. The last thing he ever saw was the death of his legacy.
That is absolutely chilling. And while this is happening, the city is torched. This brings us to the Psalms we're looking at, specifically Psalm 74. The tone shifts from historical narrative to raw, agonizing emotion.
Yes, Psalm 74 and 79 are the soundtrack to this destruction. The poet asks, why have you rejected us forever? They describe the enemies roaring in the meeting place, smashing the carved paneling with hatchets. It's not just military defeat, it's theological crisis. They cry out, we see no miraculous signs. There is no longer any prophet.
It feels like the heavens have gone silent.
Exactly. They feel abandoned. But here is the supreme irony. While the king is blinded and the temple is burning, who is safe?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah! The captain of the Babylonian guard finds him, unchains him, and essentially says, look, your God said this would happen because you didn't listen. Now, you are free. Come to Babylon and live well, or stay here. Your choice.
The traitor is the only one treated with dignity by the enemy.
It validates everything he said. Jeremiah chooses to stay with the poor, the remnant left behind in the ruins, and even then the tragedy continues. The Babylonians appoint a governor, Gedaliah, who tries to stabilize things. He tells the people to gather wine and oil, to settle down.
But there's a plot against him too?
There is. He's warned that there's an assassin, but Gedaliah, perhaps trying to be the opposite of the suspicious Zedekiah, refuses to believe it. He dismisses the warning as a lie. The cycle of poor leadership just seems to reinvent itself.
It's tragic. You have Zedekiah who listened to fear instead of truth, and Gedaliah who listened to optimism instead of reality.
It really forces us to ask, what constitutes true hearing? Jeremiah spoke clearly for years. The text was on the wall, quite literally, but the leadership was so obsessed with maintaining their image and their political alliances that they couldn't hear the survival instructions.
It's a sobering reminder that truth doesn't care about our comfort or our political standing.
No, it doesn't. And as we see with the burning temple and the blinded king, the cost of ignoring reality is paid not just by the leaders, but by everyone.
A heavy but necessary reflection. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you for listening.
If you have been blessed by this, please like, subscribe, and share this joy with others. God bless.